Hey there, Transformers. Happy Thursday lunch to you all. It is the noontime hour here in Kansas City, where I'm coming to you live from. For others of you, may not quite be lunchtime yet, or perhaps you're just wrapping up your midday break. But nonetheless, I'm not here to actually talk about lunch. I'm here to talk about another very important meal of the day, one of my favorite times of the day, which is breakfast. Now, this is a pretty divisive topic because you typically have a very staunch view on whether you're pro breakfast or anti breakfast. And it has been hotly debated over time whether or not breakfast is beneficial for us as we start a day. But I'm here to chat a little bit about how breakfast can be used to boost your productivity. So let's dive into this topic. The word in and of itself, break fast, that is to break our overnight fast. Most of us aren't getting a feeding tube of nutrition through the course of the night while we sleep. So we are all fasting to some regard. Those fasting lengths are probably different for us based on factors like how long we sleep, if we tend to eat pretty late the night before when we rise, if we have a snack after our dinner the night before. All of those factors come into play. So some people, their fast might be 8 hours. For others, a fast might be closer to 16 hours. But that first meal of the day is when we are breaking that fast. So our bodies are intended to fast. It is an important part of how we exist and how we thrive in our human bodies is to fast. So for those who are advocates of fasting approaches, I just want to start by acknowledging, yes, we all fast. Our bodies are meant to fast. I also think it's a good time to note that I am not a doctor. I am not recommending any dieting or approaches that might positively or negatively impact our health. I'm not replacing the advice of your primary care provider. So make sure that if you're considering a change in your approach to nutrition, that you are meeting with a professional. So again, breaking fast is part of our approach here. Now, what happens as we are fasting overnight is our blood glucose level drops. And our brain uses glucose to process, it uses glucose to convert energy to support our brain function. When there is a lack of glucose, our body turns to ketones. Our ketones are produced in the liver, but not every part of our brain can function with ketones as the source of energy. So we still need glucose to some extent. And again, our liver helps provide glucose in times when there is none present to be able to support our brain function. So that's a part of like a loose understanding of what the keto diet is intending to provide, is that we are using ketones to support our brain rather than the primary source, which is glucose. So the challenge that a lot of us have is this extreme fluctuation with the glucose in our systems. And I like to call this the blood sugar roller coaster, which is where our glucose levels drop considerably. Our brain sends the signal, it's time to eat, give me quick energy. And we often reach for something that is going to provide a very short response time to giving our body energy. That might come in the form of caffeine, pretty quick energy boost there. That might come in the form of simple carbohydrates. So simple carbohydrates are forms of sugars in which the body can process and break those down very quickly. A lot of processed foods, a lot of baked goods, a lot of sweets are simple carbohydrates. So that means that the body can quickly convert that food, that calorie, into energy. And it does so through transporting the glucose into our cells through our insulin. So if we experience a very sharp increase in our blood glucose, our body sends out an insulin response to allow the cells to accept that glucose. And then we might experience a blood glucose quick drop. So a very quick, like sending all the armies out in the form of our insulin, and then we experience a drop. And so we're just oscillating back and forth on this blood sugar roller coaster, experiencing the highs, maybe feelings of overstuffedness because we've eaten too quickly, we've eaten too much, and then the very fast decline. If you're someone who experiences sharp hunger pains 2 hours or less after you've eaten, chances are that there's too much simple carbohydrate in what you've eaten and not enough complex carbohydrates, usually in the form of fiber, protein, and fat. So this is where I want to share with you part of my screen here. So while I get this pulled up, I want to talk about what I call the building blocks for satiation. So to sustain good energy. And this is a lot of what I coach my individual clients on, and how to construct a good breakfast, but applies for our meals and our snacks as well. We want our meals, our snacks, to keep these things in mind. Fiber, which is typically dense with the micronutrients that are helping our cells convert energy, helping with our enzymatic processes within the body. Fiber also helps keep our gut healthy so that we don't experience that painful gas and bloating that maybe sometimes pops up after a meal. And fiber, again, is a complex carbohydrate that slowly releases the glucose into our system so that we don't get that overshoot of insulin into our body and providing that quick drop off of our energy levels. Next, we want to have healthy fat in our meal or our snack. Now, healthy fats are fuel for our brain. They help keep our brain lubricated. They are so important for the function, the cognitive function of our brain. And yet a lot of us aren't eating diets that are flush with healthy fats. So things like avocados, things like olive oils, things like salmon and other fatty fish, these are all incredible sources of healthy fats that can help support our brain function. They also act as a carrier for some of our vitamins. If you're familiar with the term fat-soluble vitamins, that means our body can only digest them with the presence of fat. Fats are high in energy and a great source of energy. So our body takes a long time to break them down, but they are packed with energy. The third component of a well-rounded for productivity meal or snack is protein. Protein is what helps the body grow. And every day our body is breaking down. It is experiencing strain or stress. And so it needs to repair and rebuild itself consistently. And that's where protein comes into play. Those amino acids are important for our body's growth in recovery, in repair. So when I'm talking about keeping a steady blood sugar level where we're oscillating in our zone of productivity throughout the day, we need to ensure that when we're considering our meals, when we're considering our snacks, that they have these three components. Now, I want to talk about some more common mistakes that we might see in how we approach breakfast that could lead to a detriment in our productivity. Of course, a breakfast that's high in simple carbohydrates is not going to be helpful for our productivity because we will experience a quick drop off of our energy pretty quickly after we eat. And then that typically means that we are overeating in the next time that we're eating because our body is sending this alarm. It's saying, give me quick energy, I need it fast, and so we're ignoring our fullness cues as we're eating. So it can lead to those feelings of overstuffedness, which then decline our ability to focus, or decline our ability to work productively. So first mistake, breakfasts that are high in simple carbohydrates. Breakfasts that are lacking fat and protein. Can't tell you the number of people who have just like a muffin for breakfast, or maybe they only have oatmeal for breakfast, and maybe there's some fruit in there, which I love fruit with my oatmeal, don't get me wrong, but we're lacking healthy fat and protein from those breakfasts. So we want to make sure that as we're considering the way to build a well-rounded breakfast, that we're keeping healthy fats and protein as part of our equation and not just focusing on carbohydrates. Now, when I was a teenager, I loved cereal for breakfast. Cereal was great. But I was just eating cereal and then skim milk with my cereal. And skim milk is lacking in fat. And so again, I was just having carbohydrates for my first meal of the day and then wondering why I couldn't focus in like my second period of class. It was because I was missing those healthy fats and those proteins and complex carbohydrates to keep my satiation consistent. So those are two areas. The third area that I commonly see as a mistake is starting your day with your caffeine. And I feel like this is only becoming more and more prevalent. But I always start my day with water. I've got a cup of water here next to me. I'm doing pretty well on this one. But I always start the day with water. Again, overnight, our body is doing a lot of processing. It is absorbing a lot of that water into our body. And so as a result, we're typically thirsty when we wake up first thing in the morning. And I have had plenty of clients who realize that they've been drinking coffee to satisfy their thirst when they could have been drinking water before they started drinking their coffee, and negating some of the impacts of that very quick burst of energy that they're getting from their coffee. So start your day with water. If you do choose to drink caffeine in the morning, make sure that you're drinking caffeine with a little bit of food associated with it. Preferably, you guessed it, protein and fat with that caffeine to help it maintain a more stable zone of energy. This is part of the reason why a lot of people swear by the bulletproof coffee method, because bulletproof coffee has some healthy fat into it and has typically some protein as well. So we want to make sure that we're not drinking caffeine on an empty stomach if we can avoid it, and that we're very aware of our plan for how to eat. So this is one thing that when folks ask me about intermittent fasting, I'm quick to clarify. Well, first of all, don't try intermittent fasting without already talking to your doctor. Your doctor should be a part of that conversation because fasting can be very dangerous for certain subgroups of people. So next is that as you're doing this, always have a plan for what your meals are going to include. This is part of why skipping breakfast can be so damaging to our productivity and to our brain. There are studies that show that skipping breakfast is having a negative impact on our cognitive function. And part of it is because of a lack of planning, a lack of intentionality behind it, right? So we want to have a plan. We want to make sure that whatever meal, whenever it is that we eat that meal that breaks our fast, is very intentional, has good building blocks with it, and that we're very mindful about how we're eating that meal, okay? Because typically when our body is hungry, it's saying, again, feed me, feed me, feed me, give me that quick energy. We eat very quickly. We eat past the point of satiation and to the place of being overfull, which then counteracts our productivity. So your takeaways from today: I'm pro breakfast. I'm just going to say that. I'm pro breakfast. We need to make sure we're starting the day with water, that when we're considering our breakfast, it needs to be well-rounded in the sense that it contains fiber, complex carbohydrates, it has healthy fats, and it has protein, that we're taking time to eat that breakfast intentionally, and that we continue through the rest of the day with that same approach of fueling our body with those components. If you have any questions for me today, folks, whether you're watching live or watching on replay, please drop them on the video. I'll make sure to get you your answers. If you'd like to have a conversation with me, direct in our DMs, please reach out to me and we can chat there. Until next Thursday, have a great weekend.